fellow travelers. Welcome to the, hold on, what's that? What level are we on? 99th level of the RPG Cave.
Oh,
I'm
dang.
one of your hosts, the level 99 human Archmage Ryan Turford, and I am joined, as always, by the level 99 elf medic, Mr. Garret Bland. Garret, how are you doing this lovely Monday evening, good sir?
I'm doing good. We could talk about the weather again on this 99th level. It's very pleasant in San Francisco, as always. It's actually not hot compared to like other places, like a lot of other places in the US and Canada. But you know what? Let's just get away from the weather now, because this is the 99th level, Ryan. We are at the same level, right, as these monsters. We're actually struggling to get it through this one. It's keeping us on our toes. I have to heal you like crazy. Yep. And you just spit out those bolt fires and fire blasts.
I love how you're making up all this lore about all these different spells that I have, Garret. Because I mean, obviously, we know that I may be an archmage, but I'm not just a pyromage, Garret. I've also got lightning spells. I got frost spells. I got arcane spells. You know, I got a whole book of spells. That's
you got a serious Diablo build going on right now. Yeah.
Clearly, but we have actually officially reached the end game of the RPG game, in the sense that because normally that's what happens when you're playing like an no, it's just not usually what happens in an RPG, where when you hit level 99, you're usually in the end game of that RPG, whether it's an MMO and you're going on raids and stuff, and you're usually fighting level 103 bosses and things like that, or if it's a Final Fantasy game like Final Fantasy VII, you're grinding the ultimate weapon in order to go face Sephiroth, or there's like any number of scenarios, Garret, where it's like, even though it's not the end of the podcast, Garret, it's like the end game. We're in the end game, because like people who play end game for MMOs, Garret, sometimes will spend like thousands of hours playing World of Warcraft end game, despite the fact that they're not leveling anymore.
That's true. But question for you, Ryan: are we gonna have a battle pass for our RPG cave to extend the live service of this podcast? That's what we're gonna do, probably.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think? Definitely. Some of our in-game cosmetic premium items for the battle pass would be, Garret? Like, would it be like fancy pint glasses for your character, like the pint glasses I show off on the show?
Pint glasses. I'm thinking like we can have our faces just like in one of those, robbery type of plastic character masks, and people could just wear them like they do in like Borderlands and stuff like that.
Or like the hit movie Point Break, Garret, from the 80s.
Of course, the hit movie Point Break.
Yes.
I remember that one.
Or we could even go Mission Impossible style, Garret, and they can be like, look exactly like digitized versions of our faces that people can then pull off and reveal their own face at that point.
That's true. Well, and then people can plant the flag of RPG Cave or any other design. Yeah. So
there's good ideas. There's
some great ideas cooking.
The ideas are flowing here, folks. I'm like,
any idea to make more money. That's the goal. That is the serious goal. Yeah.
Of course, we learned from the hit movie Spaceballs, Garret, that is the true end game, is to make money. Spaceballs, the cereals.
Merchandising.
Spaceballs, the flamethrower. Oh man, so good. What is this show?
Off the rails
anymore. But yes, we have finally, of course, reached level 99. And I mean, I'm going to kind of save a lot of our talk about that, because we actually, on all of our questions tonight, Garret, that we received from the community.
Yes.
First of all, huge thank you, of course, as always, to everyone who sent questions in tonight. Everyone actually managed to touch on the fact that it is level 99 and had some things to say about it. So I kind of wanted to save that talk for when we get here as well. So let's get into clearing the dungeon of those pesky mobs so we can go face that raid boss, because we're heading towards that end game. So folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. If you're watching the live stream right now, or at youtube.com/carpoolgamer. If you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't hit that subscribe button already, and then ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we put up new videos on the channel, or whenever we put up a live stream like the one that you're currently watching right now. Or if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well, or rate us if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And then last but not least, if you want a little toss some bucks our way, maybe get some exclusive content, or some cool like one basically long feed with all the Carpool Gaming audio feeds on it, so you don't have to switch between podcast feeds. Head over to our patreon.com/Carpool Gaming. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content. Also, Garrett, I should promote this a little bit because
Yes,
we just made this announcement yesterday, because I think the questions post went up for it today. A certain someone for the very first time is actually going to be on exclusive content. Garrett.
oh yeah.
What's happening over there? I mean, I could say it, but it's more fun if you say it.
Oh, I'm gonna be doing the Pants Patron podcast this
Yeah,
week,
you are.
so I am ready. I love listening to those little tidbits of episodes. I remember listening to them like probably a couple years ago when Sean was doing it like every week. I'm like, how is this man making so much content? And then I was like, oh, everyone's doing it rotationally. Now that like makes a lot more sense. So yeah, I'm ready. Yeah.
To be fair, we just started doing that like last month. Like my first Patreon podcast was last month. So yeah, I'm actually excited to listen to your episodes. And likewise, if people have just random questions for Garrett, just hop on that Patreon. Yeah. Anyone can submit one for $1. Ribo asks, can I send in math problems for the Pants Patron podcast for Patrons podcast? I'm going to leave the type of questions up to Garrett as far as what he wants to field.
If you do, I will be very creative about it. Yes.
Excellent. That is usually the attitude we have on that podcast. So anything goes. Also, speaking of Ribo, I saw this come up while I was doing the intro, so I wanted to flag this here. Ribo actually asked who did that theme music because it's brilliant, and believe it or not, we get this question a lot on the show. And the answer is this was actually a random song that I found on the YouTube licensed free music section on the YouTube audio library because YouTube itself, when you go into the creator studio, Garrett, you have the ability to sort through songs that, YouTube curates that you can use copyright free. So this just happens to be a song called Dude, Where's My Horse? And it just
Where's My Horse?
Yeah, that's the name.
Oh my gosh.
In fact, I'm actually just looking it up real quick because it's actually it's a country folk song. This is done by Nat Keefe with the Bow Ties is the name of the song.
With the Bow Ties.
Is the name of the artist, but the name of the song is Dude, Where's My Horse? Like the hit movie Dude, Where's My Car? Except about a horse.
It sounded more country, but it is fitting. I feel like I'm going on an adventure with that one. Apparently for that one is finding your horse.
Yeah, or just hanging out in a tavern, Garrett. And I mean, it's also kind of fitting with the fantasy theme because in most fantasy RPGs, there are horses, Garrett. Like in The Witcher,
there's a lot of horses. Yes. Yeah. Zelda's not an RPG. But yeah, many other open world RPGs have horses.
Yeah. I mean, Final Fantasy 16 has a horse, except it's not a horse; it's a chocobo, but close enough.
Chocobos. They're weird. Yeah, every time I see a chocobo, I'm like, oh, that's a Final Fantasy game.
Every time I see a chocobo, Garrett, I think about the chocobo theme from Final Fantasy 13-2 that's referred to as Crazy Chocobo. And it's like chocobo. And it's a death metal cover of the chocobo song.
Oh,
so instead of having the normal chocobo song in Final Fantasy 13-2, they replaced it with like a death metal cover. And it's by one of the greatest things in that whole game. Garrett is Crazy Chocobo. If you haven't heard it, folks, you got to look up Crazy Chocobo sometime. Not now, while you're watching the show. After you watch the show, go and look up Crazy Chocobo. In fact, that song was so good, Garrett, it made it into Fiat Rhythm Final Bar Line as one of the songs.
Okay, you know what? Like there's too much content in that game, Fiat Rhythm Bar Line or whatever. Of course, that song would be in there.
Are you trying to say that some other songs were missing that Crazy Chocobo should have been replaced with?
I don't know. Isn't there like all the Final Fantasy songs on there?
No, there's songs that are missing. I mean, Final Fantasy 14, as an example, has over, I think, 500 pieces of music at this point, and there's not even 500 songs in the main game from Final Fantasy at this point.
My God.
Yeah.
My God.
But Garrett, I'm going to take us on another side tangent before we go and read from the sacred text, because Anime Expo is actually happening right now.
That's true.
Over in California, and they had multiple Persona panels at Anime Expo with the voice actors. In fact, tonight was the first time they actually introduced the Persona 3 Reload cast because we knew that they were going to be having brand new voice actors for the game. So
Cool.
we finally got to find out who those people were. And it's a lot of voice actors that I don't really know, except for Allegra Clark, who was in a lot of the Fire Emblem games. She's in a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
And she's playing Mitsuru. But they released 2 brand new trailers for these games, Garrett. Persona 3
Yes, they did.
Reload and Persona 5 Tactica. We watched them right before the show, and oh my god, the Persona 3 trailer was only a minute long, but it sold me on the game in ways that I never expected.
It looks so good. It just like, I cannot wait to play that thing on Xbox/xCloud, streaming on my Steam Deck. It looks so good. It looks like a Persona 3, the Persona 5 graphic upgraded, whatever, but it still has that Persona 3, I don't know, style, I guess, like throughout the whole game. It looks so good.
Yeah, it's got that hip hop music throughout. It's got the visual color palette and design from Persona 3. Like, you can definitely tell, like, looking right at it, it's still Persona 3. It's just a very cleaned up and shiny version of Persona 3. But it looks like they made a lot of nice changes to the combat and the flow of combat. So I think, like, yeah, I am stoked for that game in a way that, again, I was not expecting to be right away, because I was already excited for it from the first trailer, but like, this showed a lot more stuff even in that 1 minute that we saw of it, and I can't wait for that game. And then the other one that surprised me was Persona 5 Tactica. It was more like, the trailer we got for it was more of like a deep dive on 3 of the characters in your party, and like what their abilities were and how they kind of work together. But I liked the idea of them showing off the combat a lot more for Tactica, and kind of how that's going to work, especially like them talking about Joker, actually, because I thought Joker would be like a quick short range character with his knife, but he's actually going to be like a long range character with a gun. So I think like that the way they're handling each of the characters is pretty interesting. So I liked kind of that deep dive, so we can see more about the content and how that game's actually going to play.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. I'm glad that they are doing kind of deep dives with their individual characters and just revealing more of the gameplay. I'm excited for this, but at the same time, I'm keeping my expectations in check, because while it is Persona 5, and we love Persona 5 and the Persona series, they really haven't made a tactics game like this. And so I'm going into this like Persona 5 Strikers, where I'm like, okay, I love Persona. Let's see how they do with this game. And Persona 5 Strikers is kind of exactly what I expected out of them. And so we'll see how this one goes.
Like,
but
this
I'm not imagining it to be super high quality, game breaking type of thing. So
like we know that obviously most of the mainline Persona games are like 90+ games on Metacritic, and this is more like, I'm expecting probably, like, if you wanted my Metacritic wager of where I think it'll land, I think it'll be like low 80s is probably where this one lands. Like, I think
it's going to be 7. I think it's going to be, I'm thinking low mid 7s for this one, and that's just keeping my expectations in check. I think people are going into this thinking, oh, this is a Persona game, this is gonna be so good, so great, and then they're like, oh wait, it's their try at a tactics game. Let's so I think it's gonna balance it out, but we'll see how it goes.
And yeah, you're possibly right about that idea, especially because, like, I know in the back of my mind, whatever tactics game comes after this one will be infinitely better than this one, because it'll be like, because they'll have this one under their belt first before we get whatever's next, whether it's Persona 6 Tactics, or maybe they go back and maybe that's how they go back to something like Persona 1 or 2, is maybe with a tactics game or something. Like, I think that'd be really interesting. I'm also still waiting, Garrett, for us to get that rumored like Mario Party style Persona game that's supposed to be happening at some point.
No,
because that's gonna be, especially after the release, Garrett, of the game of the year on the Switch this week. Everybody 1-2 Switch finally came out. So now that we have that under our belts, we now need a Persona fighting game. Good God.
Not a party game, not a fighting game, please. Well, I mean, Persona 5 fighting is we're due for one. So if that one announces coming out, I'm totally for it. But man, a party game, just don't, please. No. Yeah, we don't need that in this world.
That's true. We had Fortune Street once with Mario, and we never need to go back there with anything like that for Persona at this point. So,
exactly.
God, you remember Fortune Street on the Wii? That was a real bad game. But
I've heard of it, but I did not play it.
Oh, it's basically Mario Monopoly, but with Mario Party style mini games.
Oh goodness, I played the Mario Party on the DS, and that kind of sounds like that in a
Okay.
way. So, anyways.
But thank you, Brando. All right, let's, Garrett, without further ado, now that we were done talking about Persona and done kind of, getting hyped because we're finally made it to level 99. It's time to read from the sacred texts because we got a discussion, and we usually do this discussion, every time around this time of year. Where we did, like, usually every quarter, we like to do the RPG game of the year watch with like fancy graphics popping in. Just imagine, folks at home, the fancy graphics, because we don't have the budget here at Carpool Gaming for the fancy graphics.
We don't, but that's look at our hand gestures
up at some point.
It's popping out, everywhere. Yes.
That it's popping off right now. So we're going to talk about, the games that have come out since kind of the last time we did this, and as well as kind of the returning contenders, and kind of see how we're feeling about the RPG landscape in 2023. Surprise, like, to no surprise, honestly, I think it's going to be higher than probably when we were talking about this conversation last year around the same time. But I'm excited to kind of get into this. And I made a list, Garrett, of all the RPGs that have come out, and these aren't necessarily the greatest games. But we'll talk. I wanted an excuse to talk about some of these games too that we might not have talked about on the show before, and kind of give them their fair shake here. So, without further ado, let's start running these down. And I actually put these out in chronological order from when they were released. So we're going to kind of travel throughout the year. So we're going to start with the new contenders, the new games being added, and then we're going to talk about the games kind of returning from quarter one to kind of wrap things up. So first off, to begin quarter two, we got Grim Grimoire Once More. This is like a real-time strategy role-playing game from Atlas. This is a remake of a PlayStation 2 game. I played it. I thought it was fine. It was fun, but it was like nothing to write home about or anything like that, which is kind of how I felt about the original game. But it also is one of those games from Vanillaware that I know a lot of people really missed, and it's a beautiful looking game. Like, the remake that they did, like, visually pops and it looks great. But it definitely, it feels like a PlayStation 2 game when you do play it. But I wanted to at least mention it here because it was one, like, the first notable RPG we had kind of the beginning section of the year here. But yeah,
let me tell you, Ryan, I honestly forgot like what this game was until I looked it up. I was just like, because I know you've been mentioning this game coming out, and it came out, but like, even now when I'm looking at this title, I was like, I have no idea what this title is. And so there wasn't too much hype about it, but as you said, it's it's a remake of a PS2 game, kind of feels still like a PS2 game. I'll be interested into like looking into it more later down the road when it's like a good sale on Steam or something like that. But yeah, cool.
Yeah, this is a game that I think like makes more sense at more of a budget price, like almost like what you'd pay for the PlayStation 2 copy of Grim Grimoire nowadays. Like, I think like that's probably the price points that make sense for this game, because it's not even like a super long game or anything like that. But I do think it's like a game that really flew under people's radars, and I think it's better than the better than maybe I'm even selling it as tonight's.
Oh, okay, cool.
Cool. Another game that came out in April that was a kind of an old release, of course, was Mega Man Battle Network Collection. We had been waiting for this. People have been asking for this forever. Garrett, I don't think either of us actually ended up playing this one. I haven't.
No, you can talk to Matt though.
Yeah, I was gonna say if Matt was here, he would be here defending it. But even Matt, I don't think he's had time to really go back to Battle Network Collection. But from all I've heard from the reviews about Network Collection, like people say this is a really good collection. And I'm excited to play it at some point. It's actually, I've decided, Garrett, that I'm going to do like a tournament bracket for what to play, because I need a game to play for July and August, and I think I need a tournament bracket to kind of solve what game I play next, because I have like 32 games on my backlog, Garrett, and I need to figure out which one.
Only 32.
Only 32. So I
3,200 like me.
I need to figure out which of those games I'm going to play in July and August, basically up until mid-August, because that's when all the new games are kind of coming out. So
that's true.
Yeah, and Battle Network is on that list. August. So that's why I mentioned this. Like the Battle Network Collection, going back to Battle Network 1, like I think that's definitely on the docket of things I might be going back to. Maybe I'll do that live on the Twitch channel this week. Wink, wink.
Cool.
Next up, of course, we had actually lots of chat about this in the Discord, so I wanted to make sure to mention it here. Final Fantasy Pixel Remastered, of course, fantastic collection of games. Very expensive though, at
Oh, really?
like 80 American dollars for the collection of the 4 Final Fantasy games, or basically 100 Canadian dollars before tax if you want to get all 6 of these games. But these were very good remasters. We talked about them on the show, so we're not going to kind of dwell too much on them. Again, just wanted to give them a shout out here because again, like old games like this probably aren't going to make our game of the year anyways. But I think this was a great remaster, and I'm just happy this is on consoles now.
Yeah, and definitely people out there on Switch, they love having the physical edition of this game. It's great to have all these classic games all in one physical cartridge for them. Great cover art too for that physical edition. Definitely not a waste of time or resources, as I mentioned before.
If only it wasn't so bloody expensive to buy it, because
that's true.
They had like such a rare print run on the Pixel remasters for the cartridge anyways. Because like I think like I'm just doing a quick Google. So if you want to get one new at this point, Garrett, you're looking at $200 for the Switch version, or the PlayStation 4 version is actually a lot more. The cheapest version of the PlayStation 4 version, brand new, $728.
Brand new.
Like, and if you want a used copy, the cheapest price for a used copy, 600 Canadian dollars. So
you should have bought them people who wanted the physical edition, you should have gotten it day one. You should ordered at PlayAsia.
The problem is you couldn't, like, they were sold out in 15 minutes from when they went up, and there was no advance notice. So you had to literally be there at like 3 a.m. when they went up, pretty much.
That's crazy.
But so we're gonna put that on the docket, because next up, I'm gonna talk about this one, Garrett, because this is one I'm excited to talk about. Dead Island 2 is an open world zombie RPG. It's a first person game. Now, most people think of this game, think of it maybe as like a Far Cry game, but no, Dead Island, believe it or not, has always been an RPG. Like the first Dead Island was very RPG heavy. And even though it played like a first person Far Cry style game, it was very much a role playing game. And the Dead Island 2 is very much like that, but it's so much better than the first game, Garrett, that honestly, I actually think like
it's pretty good.
Yeah, like it honestly, in a weaker year for RPGs, I actually think Dead Island 2 would probably be a contender for RPG Game of the Year. In a less strong year. But because as I'm kind of alluding to as we go through this, I actually think it kind of gets overshadowed by a lot of these games here. It also didn't help, like it kind of released in a busy time earlier this year, so I think a lot of people missed out on this one. But this is a game, like when it goes on sale, like this is a game that if you like RPGs and you like first person games, like open world games, like Dead Island 2 is a great guy. Like I think that's it's a much better game than people give it credit for. The reviews, the initial reviews kind of give it credit for, especially because there were some technical problems at launch, so it got lower scores than it probably would have if it came out just a couple months later with some polish. And all that's been polished by now. Like there's been constant updates to this game. There's lots of cool DLC coming. Like this game's pretty good. Like a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
That's really cool. I've been interested in this game. And the reviews were kind of just mid, but like hearing from people personally and like going through reviews, it's like, this is actually a pretty good game. And also it's super well optimized on the PC and on Steam Deck and on Ally or whatever. So this seems like, down the road, if it's on sale, I might be interested in this because I do love my first person open world games. Definitely into it.
Yeah, for sure. Like this is one like people should not sleep on. Like when Black Friday comes around this year, like this is going to be a game I'm going to recommend to anyone who likes RPGs. Like I think it's going to be a really solid game to pick up later. But Rybo actually asked, is it stuck on the Epic's game store? I think it might be, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Since I don't really play on PC, it's tough for me to answer that question. But if memory serves, I believe it is. Now. But I mean, I have the console version because I actually have the collector's edition of Dead Island 2, like physical. So for Xbox. But
sounds good.
Moving on, Garrett, a game that we were so excited for, but then we never talked about after it came out. Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. also came out in April.
That came and gone.
Yeah, that came and went like it was nobody's business, because I think like
okay, bye.
well, I mean, part of it was we were so excited for it the year before when it was supposed to come out,
That's
and then
true.
it didn't come out. It killed, I think, all the hype for this game. Because again, like you and I talked about it on the show a lot. Like we were both pretty excited about it because we both like Advance Wars, but I don't think either of us bought this game, let alone played it.
I did not buy this game. I actually do have one voucher left for my Nintendo, and I was debating whether to get this one or not. Then Mario RPG got announced, and I'm like, okay, I'll just wait for that one. Yeah. This game, it looks good. It looks refreshed, and I've seen a lot of good reviews about it, and it's a great fresh coat of paint. But fundamentally, it's not different than the GBA versions. And I'm like, okay, I have the GBA versions on my Retro Pocket, on my Steam Deck, and I'll just play bursts and bits of that, and then I'll eventually get this game later.
I feel very familiar about that because I have it on my Analog Pocket. I have the GBA versions there, and then I have them on Wii U if I want to play them on the TV if I don't feel like hooking up my Analog Pocket to my TV, because sometimes that could be a bit of a hassle. So I have options to play these games already without needing to play the Switch version. But this is a game that I will pick up at some point, but it's definitely like I was way more excited about it before it came out, and then just for whatever reason when it came out, like honestly, I was more excited for Dead Island 2 because they both came out in a week, and which is too bad, unfortunately, because I if this came out last year, I think it would have been a much bigger deal. Versus
that's true. There was a lot of hype last year, and then it just totally killed it when they pulled it off. But makes sense. Now it's back, and I'm glad they released it
for sure. Well, next up, a game that came out around the same time Zelda came out. So a lot of people, I think, didn't check this one out, mostly because it's on PC. But because Zelda was out around the same time, Honkai Star Rail, from the makers of Genshin Impact, the turn-based role-playing game that's free to play. This is another situation where, like, in another year, like just like Dead Island, like I think this would have been like a contender for RPG Game of the Year in a big way. I don't know. It's pretty darn good. But
it's good.
I want to hear your complaints about Star Rail, Garrett.
I'm not complaining. I just want to, with the Hoyo verse type of mentality, I don't know. I get into these games and I can kind of feel what this game is. Even with Genshin Impact, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a free to play game. It's a very high quality free to play game. It's great turn-based combat. It's just a lot going on though. The UI and going into level to level and figuring out the story. There's just a lot of things going on in this game. I've been trying to play this on my phone actually, and the text is always too small. I don't know where to go to like upgrade my characters. I think there's some ups and downs, but overall, I agree with you. It's a great high quality free to play game.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, if you can get past the free to play elements, and because you're right, like you do feel a little dirty playing this game in a way that you normally wouldn't playing a normal like game that you paid for outright. But I don't know. The gameplay loop in Honkai though was just so fun and satisfying that's what won me over with that game, and why I'm actually like very excited for it to come to PlayStation 5 later this year, because I think really sink my teeth into Honkai Star Rail and then really get into this game a lot more.
Nice. But give them all your money. Give them all so you can get your number one waifu. 5-star packs.
Although I'm gonna go ahead and make this prediction right now, Garrett. I actually think that even though in our personal running for RPG Game of the Year, I actually think that this sneaks into the Game Awards RPG Game of the Year conversation instead, and actually ends up being a nominee this year.
It can be, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible that it might not with some of the other games coming out this year, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this will actually hit with people, with the voters for that, and it might actually sneak in there. But we'll see.
So how many nominees do we normally get? Like 5? Yeah. It could be the number 5. But it's totally going to be like in the mobile game category or something like that.
Yeah. Whereas, I'm talking about specifically like regular RPGs.
RPG.
I think it'll make it because there are a lot of the games we're talking about here. that we're going to talk about other than the higher profile games are games that people haven't really heard of. So people will be like, oh, Star Rail, I remember that game. And then probably it'll fit in there. Just like Genshin Impact kind of stuck in the year that it was nominated. But moving on, at the start of June, we got Diablo 4, Garret, which, I mean, this is a slam dunk. Like, it's going to be like
slam dunk.
It's probably going to end up being in our top 5 RPGs of the year when the year is over. Like,
easily.
I don't see how it isn't at this point.
Yeah. I still haven't gotten it yet, though. I'm sorry. I was away in China when this released, and then for a good while I was in China. Like it's been a few weeks after release when I got back. So,
and you had to deal with just looking in the Discord, just seeing like all of us talking about this game. I know that a lot of us have kind of slowed down or have stopped playing this game. I know personally I've stopped playing, but it's not because of any fault of the game. I'm waiting for season 1 to come out later this month to jump back in, because that's when the battle pass starts, which of course was paid for as part of getting the version of the game that I got. So I'm like, well, I may as well wait for that to come out, because in order to take part in that, you have to create a seasonal character, which then which you can only create when that starts. So that's why I'm like, I'm putting it down for now, because I want to then really play with that seasonal character to earn all the rewards and whatnot. So that's kind of why I'm kind of
I'm hoping to get it before Starfield. That's my my goal, but if that doesn't happen, that's fine. I'll get it later this year. I played the beta, one of the betas, and I'm totally for it. It plays great on Steam Deck if you got the Blizzard client. You could just download the non 4K textures, and it's actually a pretty small pack, like a small file size. And even on PC, it runs beautifully on my PC. So yeah.
Yeah, I can't see his point. I can't see mentions that they also have Diablo, but they are too hooked on Zelda at the moment. Yeah, like I think a lot of people are in that same boat as well, because this came out so close to Zelda. Like, I think a lot of people like played it, finished the campaign, and then put it down because there's still Zelda and Street Fighter and Final Fantasy and all these other games to play at the moment. So I think a lot of people will come back to it. Like, I think for me, I know that this is going to kind of be like my when the season starts back
your
up,
live service
basically my live service game, because I always have one of those going. Yeah.
But goodbye Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Oh, please. Final Fantasy. I started playing Final Fantasy 14 again this week, Garret, because of course.
Oh no.
Because of course we're back, baby. We're back now that I'm done 16. I now have room in my life for Final Fantasy 14 while I wait for the next big game to play. I've been playing that in NHL basically at this point. But next one, I gotta sell you on this one, because this sounds like a weird entry to put on this list. Because you're probably looking at this and you're like, how is Street Fighter 6 a role-playing game? And let me tell you what, folks. I'm referring specifically not to the multiplayer for Street Fighter 6, because that's very much just your standard fighting game. You have all the standard fighting game options that you normally have. But the reason we talk about Street Fighter 6 on this show is because the World Tour mode, Garret, I don't know if you've seen the World Tour mode from Street Fighter 6. The World Tour mode is basically the campaign for the game. You create your own character, like your own avatar, in the world of Street Fighter 6. And it is a open world action RPG where you play as your character. You get new gear that gives yourself different stats and buffs and whatnot, just like you would in a role-playing game. You have conversation options with different characters. Your character is kind of learning the ropes from other Street Fighter characters, but there's also this big unfolding story about this gang war that's happening in Metro City, and you're trying to stop that. Like, it's very similar to Yakuza Like a Dragon, but instead of the combat in the game being turn-based, it's fighting just like Street Fighter is. So it's a fighting game. It's fighting game combat, but it's totally gauged by your character's level, the stats that you have on the gear that you're wearing. Like, it's very much a role playing game that just happens to have a fighting game combat system. So
interesting.
And again, the open world exploration is very similar to what you'd have in an open world action RPG. And in fact, I would dare to say it's more of an RPG than Final Fantasy 16 is when it's all said and done. So I wanted to make sure to include Street Fighter 6 because Street Fighter 6 is a very good game. It's got a goofy story, and it's totally a role-playing game as far as the World Tour main campaign is. And again, it's a pretty beefy campaign. It's like 15 to 20 hours to finish. So
Oh wow.
it's very much a role-playing game, and it deserves the recognition of being on our list. Even though it's not going to win our role-playing game of the year, it deserves to be recognized along with these other
Cool.
games.
I like this trend in fighting games. It seems like they're kind of leaning into this more and more with their campaigns and their single player stuff. Is like, hey, let's add some of these other systems. Smash Bros. Did a very similar thing as well with their single player stuff. And yeah, there's many other smaller fighting games that do this too. So cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
This reminds me very much of Grand Blue Fantasy Versus that came out from Arc System Works a few months ago, or not a few months ago, a few years ago, where it's kind of like almost like a Rule of Princess EX, which was like a Switch action RPG, but in the Grand Blue Fantasy Versus style. So we've been seeing more fighting games tiptoe into the RPG realm, and this one again, Street Fighter 6 went fully there, Garrett, with the power of role-playing games. So there you go. Happy Wayne Gretzky Day, boys, says Sean Capri. Welcome on in, Sean. All right.
Welcome
next up, Final Fantasy 16, the big game of the current moment, is out. Although I was actually hesitant to put it on this list, Garrett, because we had this discussion last week. Is Final Fantasy 16 even an RPG? It's on and we talked after our discussion last week, we concluded it is, but it's like the most borderline between being just an action game and being an RPG as humanly possible at this point. Like it's so close to being an action game that, again, a lot of people wouldn't qualify it as an RPG. We came to the conclusion that's an RPG, so of course it is eligible. And I finished it this week, Garrett, because I finished it late last week, and it was awesome. It was a fantastic game. It's got some pacing issues, but for the most part, honestly, I couldn't put this game down, and it's incredible. And I have like a review video coming out later this week on the channel, so make sure to stay tuned for that. But yeah, Final Fantasy 16, very solid game. It's going to be on a lot of people's list for best RPG of the year, and
I think it could be on mine too. It is a very impactful game. It's very high quality, very cinematic. I agree with you that, it's not, I wouldn't say it's like as RPG heavy, but like compared to like other RPGs that we're getting and what I kind of anticipated. This seemed, it is way more linear, way more focused on action, and like it really is the Devil May Cry mechanic Final Fantasy game. It's so good. It's a very, very good game.
100%. Like it definitely deserves to be on this list. And like we would be doing the audience a disservice if we didn't at least include this game on our best list of RPGs probably by the end of the year. Like I would be shocked if we had 4 other RPGs that were somehow better than it at the end of the year. Or I should say that would supplant it from that list, I think. Because I think like Diablo 4 and Final Fantasy 16 from this kind of month are probably our 2 kind of front runners from
those are the 2 biggest ones for sure. Yeah.
But I also got to throw in there this other game I've been playing, Garrett, that I haven't finished yet, but I'm pretty close to the end. The Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie. This is actually out next week, but our friends, of course, over at NIS, huge shout out to NIS, actually sent me over a code, and I've been playing it. And this game is really good too. Like it's kind of like the Avengers Endgame of the Trails series, where it's kind of like all the characters kind of crossing over in one game for the first time and kind of wrapping up all the storylines. But I wanted to approach it differently because, I know Kevin Ainsworth, he just put up his review over at Save the Game Media, and him and I are going to be doing a discussion later about this game. But I want to come in as the person who hasn't played all these games and kind of see if I was able to, get through the game and still have a good time with it. And I'm pleased to report that I'm actually having a great time with this game. And it is really good. And the story is still hitting with me because I at least played the Trails to Zero and Trails to Azure games, which at least I got the backstory of those 2 the characters from those games, which play a big part in this game. So I was able to ease into some of the stuff. Whereas the Trails of Cold Steel part of the storyline from here, I of course don't know any of the characters from those games because I haven't played any of those games. But the combat's still super fun. It visually looks great, and I think it's actually a pretty solid game. Again, I think this kind of fits in the same category as Dead Island 2. We're in a weaker year
this probably would have been up for consideration for probably top 5 RPGs of the year.
Oh, really? Okay. So yeah, lately these games, the Legend of Heroes games that are coming out, they've been pretty good. And they're actually re-releases, right? Like they were originally from Japan, right? Like way long ago.
Well, I wouldn't call them re-releases. This Trails into Reverie is actually a new game.
It's a new one. Okay,
but
cool.
But it came out in Japan first, and then it came to North America like
got it
next week. So yes, it's been out in Japan for a little while, but I think it came out at the end of last year. So it is a release technically from last year, but in North America, I'm counting it. It's a new game this year, but it's not a re-release of an old game. Like it's brand new.
Cool. Sounds good. I want to mention one game out of this that you didn't mention, and that's fine. I don't think anyone really knows what it is except for me and Seth. And that is Fuga, Melodies of Steel 2.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about
this
that
quarter. Yep. And that is the sequel to the first one, Fuga Melodies of Steel by CyberConnect 2. And they're both on Game Pass, and they're both excellent games. They are top-notch, high quality. They're into the, it's the furry animal humanoid type of stories. But the writing is pretty good. There's just Japanese voice acting in it. But that's totally fine. But it is like think of it as an on rails turn-based strategy game where you're like in control of a tank, and then there's many different parts to your tank, like defense and attack, and many different weapons. And depending on what the next stage is, like what kind of enemies you're gonna have, you're gonna have to prepare for that. And then you level up your skills, you bond with characters as well together. It's overall very good. So I highly recommend it if you have Game Pass to at least try it out if you're into that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's one that really reviewed well too. And it's a shame because I totally forgot that had even come out, because it came out like the week after Zelda, I think, right? So like it was very
it came very close.
Yeah, like even I overlooked it when I was putting this list together. And in fact, actually, I was a little bit worried because you picked this in fantasy cricket, Garret, in our Carpool Gaming Host League, and I was like, and it looked like for a while there weren't going to be enough reviews of this game to actually be able to give you a score for it.
Yeah.
But luckily, people's reviews came through, because I think this is also, again, a stronger game that I, again, totally forgot about putting the list together.
Yeah.
So those are all the new contenders to the RPG Game of the Year 2023 bubble. But let's talk about the returning contenders, the games from earlier this year. One Piece Odyssey, of course, was kind of an okay game. I know Matt played it. It was fine. It exists. But I wanted to give it a mention here because Fire Emblem Engage, Garret, I think was one of our favorite games when we had had this conversation a couple months ago. I still think it's high, but I feel like at this point it's probably not making the top 5. It's going to be on the bubble. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is one like, this is the fan service game to me, but it's, looking back at it, it's not memorable. How about that? It's just an ode to the previous Fire Emblem games, and that's pretty much it. Yeah,
it was there to celebrate the anniversary of Fire Emblem, and it did so in a great way. And I still think it's a fantastic Fire Emblem game, but you're right, it's not like, I don't think it's as memorable as something even like Three Houses or Fates,
I think so. Yeah,
Awakening. So it's definitely back there. One I wanted to mention, because this one I totally turned around on this game. Forspoken was a game that got very poor reviews when it came out, and deservedly so, because the performance was terrible on this game. This is another game like Dead Island 2 that had poor reviews when it came out, but I think it's a much better game now after patches.
Oh, really?
Than people give it credit for, because I think Forspoken is a game that I was really down on after the demo of Forspoken. Like, it really kind of killed any excitement for me for the game. But then when I'd heard people talk about the game after getting their hands on it, after patching, I heard a lot of really great things about it. So I was like, okay, I need to give this game a try. And I loved it. I actually think Forspoken is actually a really solid game. And honestly, again, if it launched in kind of the state it's in now, I think we would have had a much different conversation about Forspoken than we kind of see on the reviews, which I think turn people away from Forspoken. Because even going and looking at, people like the user score for Forspoken, I actually think it's much higher than the kind of the review score is at this point. Because I think people who have actually given this game a chance have actually really enjoyed it. So I think like, even though again, it's probably not enough to kind of crack what I would assume like our top list of RPGs are at the end of the year, I do think it's another game like Dead Island 2, like when it goes on sale, like Black Friday time, like this is another game I'm going to be recommending to people to go check out, despite its kind of poor reviews at launch. But
cool. Yeah, that's so interesting. You talk about that for Forspoken and now Dead Island 2, and this happens to a lot of games these days. And do you think it's really because they needed more time to cook, or is it more like they kind of had to release it to get kind of the feedback needed in order to like fix it up, or it had to be in the system in some way form? Yeah, maybe that's a general question. But yeah, it's interesting that you say about that for two of these games.
Yeah, like I think that's always on a case by case basis with these two games in particular. The two games we're talking about, Dead Island 2 and Forspoken. I actually think it was in both cases. It was these need to come out for our financial reports, we just need to push them out regardless of what state they're in. And I felt that way about both of these games, especially Forspoken, because I know Square Enix's like financial report was around that time. They need, especially because it had been delayed a couple times too. Like they needed to get that one out the door. So that's kind of why I think they launched it in a busy month within the state it was in, where it just didn't really have a chance of surviving against Dead Space Remake or Fire Emblem Engage or all the other games that were also coming out in January this year. But
got it.
Yeah. Moving on. Hogwarts Legacy came out in February. I never played this one, but I'm also not the big Harry Potter person. A lot of people really like this one. Again, this is one of those games in a weaker year, I actually think probably would end up in like the Game Awards kind of quotient of RPG of the year, and it still might this year. It might. But I don't know. But I think like hype kind of died down on this game pretty quickly, although it sold very well. Like it's one of the best.
It sold very well
at this point.
Yeah. It's only been recently on sale digitally. Like it's been keeping that same price until like now when the Steam summer sale is happening. This is a game I definitely want to still check out when I'm like, okay, I'm in need for it, or I'm on like there's a sale for it that's pretty good. But I am not like, I need to play this right now. I got too many other games to get through. So yeah, it looks good though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and again, I kind of want to play it at some point. Like, despite the fact that I'm not into Harry Potter, this is a game that, you know what, is actually on the tournament bracket that I made because I kind of want to try it at some point. But we'll see. We'll see if it ends up winning. But next one, this is kind of like become like almost like a live service game for me to play over the course of the year. Fiat Rhythm Final Bar Line, of course. It already had a ton of content, as Garret alluded to earlier, but it's getting even more content every 2 weeks, basically, because there's new DLC for this game every 2 weeks. And it, like, this game was already great before, but with the DLC songs, like, chef's kiss. Like, this might be one of the best music games I've ever played. And the fact that it's a role-playing game on top of that, and it celebrates Final Fantasy music, like, this is a no-brainer, like, slam dunk for Ryan Turford specifically, and no one else, except maybe Seth Sturgill as well. Like, he's the only other person I know that's like super into this game. Because they just this week they released like 8 new Secret or Mana series songs, including a bunch of songs from Trials of Mana. And then the 2 weeks before that, they had not one but 2 packs of Chrono tracks from both Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross. Like, oh my god, this game is so good, Garret. That again, like in a weaker year, this would have definitely been like a slam dunk, like top 3 or 4 game of the year.
Is this a season pass type of deal with these extra songs?
Yeah, it does have a season pass. I mean, it's got 400 Final Fantasy Final Fantasy songs in the main game, but then if you want the songs from other franchises, you have to get the season pass, which isn't too expensive.
Cool.
But
cool.
And then
I'm thinking of getting it eventually. I do like rhythm games. So.
And even if you don't like Final Fantasy, like the Final Fantasy music, I think we can all agree Final Fantasy music, even if you're not into the games themselves, the music in those games are pretty darn good.
Oh, the music's incredible in Final Fantasy. It's like very top-notch stuff. So yeah, I would be into it.
Yeah. And then like 2 weeks from now, we're getting Octopath Traveler music in it. And then after that, we're going to start getting like Xenogears and like all kinds of cool stuff. Like
going into the inner depths here.
Yeah. We're going to the weeds. But then they also have 2 things like towards the end of the season pass that are question marks. So there's 2 games we don't know about yet. I'm imagining one of those is Final Fantasy 16, and I imagine the other maybe being Final Fantasy 14 and Walker are kind of my 2 bets.
Okay, that makes sense.
We'll see. Who knows? Maybe we'll be surprised and they'll put Parasite Eve music in there, Garrett. How cool would that be?
Mm-hmm.
I love how you.
It could be possible. Sorry, I was just like when I hear Parasite Eve from you, I like am not phased anymore.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Excellent. I'm glad that's finally set in at this point. That you're just like, yeah, okay. Ryan's talked about Parasite Eve again. Moving on. And of course, it's our 99th episode, Garrett. Of course, I have to mention at least Parasite Eve at least once.
In one, out the other.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next up, I think this is one of the strongest contenders this year. We talked about it before.
Yes.
Octopath Traveler 2. We had a whole conversation about Octopath Traveler 2. Like, go back and listen to that for kind of our full thoughts. But that game is incredible. One of the best turn-based RPGs in years, and definitely one of the strongest contenders, I think, for this year.
Yeah. No, totally agree.
Yeah. Next up, The Legend of Heroes Trails to Azure as well. Of course, this was a re-release, but a very, very strong game. Like, if this was a brand new game, I actually probably would have rated this game much higher. But because it's an older game, because it is a PSP game, definitely much lower on the list, but it's still very, very solid turn-based game that with a lot of great strategy in it. So that I know a lot of people kind of missed out on. But and then last up, of course, giving Garrett Bland the shout out here, even though I don't think either of us have played this because like both of us are behind on the Ryza games. Atelier Ryza 3, Alchemist of the End, and The Secret Key came out this year too, which I again reviewed really well, but neither of us really got a chance to play because we're both not at the point where we're ready for the third game.
Did you hear, Ryan, about the anime? There's a Atelier Ryza anime.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch that actually.
It looks seriously like Atelier Ryza, so yeah, it'll be a good anime. Yeah,
I think so too. So there you go. That's all the games that have kind of released this year as far as RPGs. As far as games I would consider contenders. Like there's been some smaller indie stuff as well that I knew neither of us knew anything about or hadn't played yet. But I think these are kind of
Brian, you missed one.
What I missed?
And I can't believe you missed it. I shame on you. We got DLC for a very special RPG.
Oh, I didn't miss that.
Year.
I left it off. I left it off.
We're putting it in there. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Future Redeemed, and it's peak fiction. I'm hearing. I'm hearing if you're a Xenoblade Chronicles fan, you must play that DLC because it kind of puts all the main characters together and make a whole story about it. So I have not touched it yet, but I will play through it this year sometime.
Yeah. I will. On that note, Garrett, I will say that the Fire Emblem DLC kind of disappointed me this year, and I was hoping for from that, which makes me even more sad about Engage earlier this year. But yes, I knew that was there. I didn't include it because there's also a question that actually relates to that a little bit.
Oh, okay, sounds good. Cool.
No, it's all good. So, Garrett, I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and we'll go back and forth on this real quick because I'm curious to know, now that we've talked about the games the RPGs that have come out this year so far, what is the best RPG that you played this year that will actually release this year? I will include remakes or re-releases of old games in here if you want to have those. But what's the best RPG that you've played this year that came out this year?
I think it's Octopath Traveler 2 so far.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm still not done with the game, so I don't want to say definitively it's going to be like my favorite game or whatever. I'm about 40 hours in, and I played a couple more chapters. What I do love about this game is that even though I was away for a month, I come back and I instantly know what I'm doing in that game. Like, okay, just get familiar with my characters again, items, skills, or whatever. But I was back at it, just going through chapters, going through the story. It is seriously like just top-notch graphics, music, gameplay. Turn-based mechanics is probably one of the best I've played in a long time. I think Octopath Traveler 2 is still my favorite RPG that I'm still currently playing for 2023. Yeah.
Nice. So, that's a good one. Again, that's a really, really solid pick this year. From me, it's honestly a toss-up, but I'm going to have to lean towards Diablo 4. I think at this point is probably the game I've enjoyed the most this year. And I think part of that's just been playing with friends and having a fantastic time, but just also playing by myself
and being able to have a great time there. Like I think Diablo 4 is very, very solid. It's like just ekes out Final Fantasy 16, I think, for me at this point.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 16, like it was incredibly solid. The story just touched me so much. I was bawling my eyes out by the end of Final Fantasy 16. Like the story,
I can tell I could probably do that too.
Yeah, and of course,
super epic.
And there are some like super epic boss fights in that game, but I think the pacing of that game is kind of what prevents it from me crowning it like my favorite RPG of the year. So I think that it holds it back just enough where I think Diablo 4 kind of sneaks in is my favorite so far this year. And then Theatrhythm is actually probably my third favorite at this point, believe it or not, over Octopath.
Of course it is.
Yeah, Octopath's definitely up there as well. And then honestly, my fifth one, I'm going to give it to Dead Island 2. I think Dead Island 2 is a much better game than people give it credit for, or people think it is. And yeah, I think it's solid. In fact, Court actually had a glowing review for it on our channel if you want to go check that out as well. Did not just trust my opinion, but we also have Court's opinion on it as well. But Garrett, I'm going to ask you this question, since of course it's the RPG Cave. And of course, your co-host is me, Ryan Turford. Of course, I have to ask this question. What is the best role-playing game that you've played this year that didn't come out in 2023? Like any old games you went back to this year that was probably your favorite?
I know what you're alluding to. But yeah, I have played. I have not played too many RPGs outside what's released this year. I've played Live Alive, and I played Shining Force.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to ask this question, because I knew you played both of those, and I knew you probably felt similarly about the two of them.
I really enjoyed both of them, but I think Shining Force kind of edges out just a little bit more for me, because tactical role playing, and I was very surprised how a game of this age still interested me and kept me going on my toes throughout the entire like every single level is pretty good. Pretty good level design, pretty good, very good characters. I felt like I wasn't too overpowered, and but also had a good challenge of all the different enemies there. So yeah, shout out to Shining Force. That is a excellent tactical role-playing game.
Yes, Garrett. Yes, good answer. I mean, to be fair, I wasn't trying to beat you into that. I knew you'd also really like Live Alive a lot, so I was curious to know which you actually probably enjoyed more between the two of those. As for me, I mean, I could just, cheat and just say James Cameron's Dark Angel for the original Xbox, being, of course, one of the best. Because I have this copy of James Cameron's Dark Angel Season 1 now available on DVD right next to
James Cameron's Dark Angel. My goodness.
Of course. That's been a running bit this whole year, Garrett. And I'm looking over.
Is it an RPG though?
No, it's not. That's why I actually joked about it. It's not actually an RPG, but
I love it.
To be honest, Garrett, I'm kind of in a similar boat as you, where I haven't had as much chance this year to play older RPGs.
Yeah.
I played a lot of older games. I played Super Metroid this year. I beat the original Super Mario Brothers 5 times in a row this year.
Why?
Because I like that game a lot.
You love it? Okay.
And when you play it when you with each new playthrough, Garrett, it becomes more and more difficult because the enemies are replaced with different enemies, and it gets more difficult until you decide to put the game down because you run out of lives.
Interesting. All right then.
Yeah, I replayed all the Mega Man games this year. I played a lot of old games, but I haven't played a lot of old RPGs this year like I did last year. Because last year I actually kind of went ham on playing old RPGs last year. Like I played all the Valkyrie Profile games as well as a bunch of other RPGs, like all the Parasite Eve games I played again last year. Like I replayed a lot of RPGs last year. So honestly, I think this year the RPG that kind of fits in this camp is Lunar 2 Eternal Blue on the Sega CD.
Okay.
I'd always played the PlayStation 2 version, never played the original Sega CD version. But did really enjoy it, and I have a fancy physical copy on my shelf there. It's very expensive, Garrett, which is why I'm not going to go over reach for it. But
did you play it on that physical disc?
I did on my
the white gloves.
I mean, no. So I actually, with expensive games like that, Garrett, I actually use first of all, I have the analog Mega SG console, so I have the fancy console to play it on, and then I use an EverDrive in there, so I don't have to play off the disc. Because I mean, I own the disc, so it's not like I'm doing anything weird.
No, it's good. You don't want to wear and tear that thing. Yeah.
It's But I like playing on original
expensive.
hardware with the original controller, and so that's why I love playing on the Mega SG. I can't see. He says, "Would you consider Phantom Dust?" Phantom Dust technically kind of is a role playing game. I don't know. It's kind of hit or miss. For folks that don't know, Phantom Dust is a it's a card game on the original Xbox.
Yeah, it's that weird one. The one on the
one that they did re-release it for free on Xbox One.
So weird
as well.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
I have it on there.
Yeah,
so
it's close. I would say it's pretty close to an RPG. I think it kind of counts. I can't see, but yeah.
I want to shout out some other games that I just been dabbling it with this year, but not like really making it to my list. It's the RPGs. It's Chained Echoes. I did play a good amount of that game, and it's very good. And if you are really into linear-based story games, like Final Fantasy-ish 4 through 6, and then maybe it's very Chrono Trigger inspired. Yeah, definitely would recommend it. And if you like politics, Chain Echoes, very good indie role-playing game. Fuga Melodies of Steel, we already talked about that. I have been dabbling with Soul Hackers too, because it came out on Game Pass. Really good, cool game. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, it is a D&D first-person shooter, and I played all the way through it on my Steam Deck. It is fantastic.
It's really good.
And then, of course, I've been playing this sneakily behind you, Ryan. I don't know if you want to play this more as I go along. I've been playing Persona Q2.
Yeah,
on my
boy.
3DS. Yeah. I beat the first dungeon. I'm in the second dungeon right now. With that one. So, pretty good. So
I was going to ask you about that probably next week, but you've already beat me to it, Garrett. But we'll talk about it more next week. But nice.
We'll talk about it more later. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice. Fun stuff.
All right. Garrett, it's time to party up. Let's get the band together, because we asked people, of course, what their favorite role-playing games they've played this year. And also people wanted to talk about episode 99. So we'll talk about that as well. So we're going to start off with Rybo, who says, obviously my pick for RPG of the year is Various Day Life or Octopath Traveler 2. Y'all know it's a toss-up for me. My question is, are you max level types, or do you prefer the challenge of tackling the end boss under leveled? Congratulations. Here is to the next 99 episodes. Thank you so much, Rybo, for the question. And also the shout out to Various Day Life, which also came out this year, Garrett. And we never need to talk about that game ever again.
No. Did you hear that package deals of Octopath Traveler 2 and Various Day Life is cheaper?
Oh, we talked about this because Sean did a live stream of him going through the Steam sale of all the games he was going to buy. And I think it was Donnie or someone else talked him out of that, out of getting that deal. He's like, they're like, just like, no, don't pollute your library. Pay the $5 more to just get Octopath Traveler 2.
Yeah, don't get Various Day Life. Yeah, I heard it's just a waste of time. So.
No, but I mean, if it's cheaper to get both games, you might as well get both games and just hide Various Day Life in your library rather than paying more for
just go to Green Man Gaming. They'll hook you up with a very good deal with Octopath Traveler 2. That's how I did it. So
nice.
Max level types are preferring the challenge. I'm actually more in the camp of trying to tackle under level, just to see if I can go through it. And if I can't, then I go back and grind and do all that stuff. I actually did that recently with Octopath Traveler 2. I was in one of these chapters where the boss, I knew I was kind of under leveled, but I just really wanted to see if I could get through it. And I was scraping by, man. Like I had 3 characters down, 1 character's like at like very low health, and I'm like, only have this enough for this small basic magic attack. Will I defeat it? And that's the one thing with Octopath 2. You don't really know the HP unless you analyze it recently or whatever. But yeah, it was like a home stretch, and I'm like, it felt so good that I beat the boss, and it was just like very little left. But on the other hand, I do like grinding and making sure that I'm way above level, so I can just enjoy the story a little bit more too. So
yeah.
What
for
about
me,
you?
I'm kind of in a similar, but I think it just is always on a game by game basis. I never am the type of person that it's like, I'm going to definitely go in and 90 and like 100% this and get to 99% so I can beat the boss at my most powerful. But if it's one of those things where if I'm really in love with the game, I'm just going to naturally do that anyways. Like I usually have a get to the point where like whenever I feel like I'm ready to tackle the boss, I'll just go and do the final boss or go to the final area in the game. Like that's kind of the way I feel. Like where I feel like I go there when I feel like I'm just ready to go do it, whether it's under level or right at level 99. Because like to give you two very different examples. In Octopath Traveler, I didn't grind and went to the final boss there, and and loved the challenge of doing that, because I felt like I was ready to go do that. Whereas Final Fantasy 16, the game was actually pretty easy. It's not a difficult game.
It is, yeah.
But I was enjoying it so much that I wanted to do all the side quests and get the legendary weapon and do all the hunts and all the other side activities before going to the final boss. Not because I needed to feel overpowered, but just because I was enjoying the game. So I think it's always on a case-by-case basis where I'm not always playing games for the challenge, especially role-playing games. So I'm not like, I'm never the type of person that likes to like under level myself for a final boss. I just go in there when I'm ready to do it. And if I fail miserably, then I come out and then do grinding and then try again. Cool. Especially with older RPGs, because that's more common having to do that. But next up, we got Yarden, who says, congrats on reaching level 99. Question, has been being on the show changed your taste in the type of role-playing games you prefer, or has the show convinced you to step outside your usual comfort zone and try games that you probably never would have tried otherwise? To answer your question, the best RPGs of the year have not actually been released yet. Because I think Yarden very excited for Starfield. In fact, every time I mention Starfield, it almost like summons Yarden to whatever live stream or chat we are currently having at that point. But
me and Yarden are on the same wavelength there for sure. Yeah.
So Garret, I'm going to start with you with this question, because I feel like your taste, or at least the way you approach RPGs, is definitely different from when we first started, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's just, even me being in Nintendo Shack, I tended to go into more Nintendo first party titles. I would probably pay attention more to Advance Wars, or I'll probably pay attention to more Tears of the Kingdom or something like that. Whereas now, just being with you in the RPG cave, you assigned me to do Shining Force, and I really enjoyed it. I like looking at older RPGs and seeing which ones I can get through and kind of work through and be patient enough about it. I think podcasting overall, people kind of just influencing me how I approach role-playing games, especially, with Final Fantasy 16 as well. I know your hype was really up about it. I was really amped up about it too. And that's one of the rare cases, because I've never really touched I've touched Final Fantasy, but not like really get into it like the latest entry. So yeah, I think my approach to RPGs are quite different than what I had before, where I just, let me go to the next Fire Emblem game or go to the next, sequel or whatever like that. Yeah. So yeah,
I was gonna say old Garret would have been wrapping up, getting ready for Pikmin 4 at this point, playing the demo, getting ready for Pikmin 4 kind of later this month. Whereas I don't know if you're that person anymore, Garret, because I give you too many games. I shove all these other RPGs at you, Garret, every single week, and you're like it's too many. There's too many games.
Play Parasite Eve, Garret.
You do realize that when we finish Persona Q2, Garret, Parasite Eve is one of the games for consideration for your next game. So get ready, because you're going to play it eventually. I'm going to make sure
eventually
you play Parasite Eve.
I'm sure I will.
Yeah. As for me, honestly, I think the show has just inspired me to venture out more. But I mean, I'm the type of person that played a lot of role-playing games already. So it's just like,
you're very out there.
I'm also the type of person too that just podcasting in general hasn't ever really changed the way I play games or changed the games that I play. Because, I never really play games for content reasons. I just play games that I enjoy. That's always very much been my mantra. So whatever I feel like playing at the moment is kind of that thing where, like, everyone else was playing Zelda and talking about Zelda in May, but I was like, you know what? That James Cameron's Dark Angel, I think I should play that instead.
Well, you kind of were assigned to it too. So
well, no, but even outside of that, Garret, something else like that would have filled its place instead of playing Zelda, probably. I'm just saying, like, I'm not always like
playing the latest and greatest game because of content reasons. If I'm playing the latest game, like Final Fantasy 16 as an example, it's because it's a game I was looking forward to and I'm genuinely excited to play it. So like that's always kind of been my mantra. That's why I play a lot of old games too. Like that, a lot of times that's just what I'm in the mood for. And I don't think the show in a way has changed the way I approach that. Just like I would say the same thing about Xbox Drive. It's kind of the same way where like I'm playing the games on Xbox, like the first party games there, because I would have played them like those games anyways, because I'm excited. I like first party Microsoft stuff. So so I think that's the reason why I'm like my approach to things haven't really changed, because I think that's just the way I've always been. Like I've always really been into RPGs, and it's also the reason why Garret, every time he comes on here, is forced to hear me drone out about 9 or 10 games he's never heard of before, and then just adding more games to the backlog at this point.
Well, I hear it over and over again. I know exactly which titles I tend to hear now.
It's true. I mean, but just wait till that Legend of Dragoon hype starts up again, Garret, where I start telling you about Legend of Dragoon and we tell you stories.
We can get that on the PlayStation now, so
that's true.
The PlayStation 5.
It's actually very accessible. You can buy it for $10, like I did.
Also, I don't want to miss this opportunity. I think Yarden's talking about Sea of Stars, the best RPGs.
There's that too.
He's totally in. Yeah, he's totally in for that.
I think they're both in that camp. But next up, Savoy Prime says, "Congrats on the milestone, fellas. Sadly, the only RPG I played this year is Xenogears." That's not sad. That's actually a great answer.
That's great.
And while I'm currently playing that, but Trails into Reverie releases soon, which will be a day one purchase for me. Nice. It's actually a really good game.
Good for you, man.
I think you'll like it. I'm willing to say that will be my RPG of the year, but that might change once I get Final Fantasy 16. We shall see. Question for the show: when you guys started the RPG Cave, did you see yourselves making it to episode 99? How do you feel the show has changed since episode 1? So honestly, Garret, we never talked about this publicly, but there was actually a chance that this show might not have made it past episode 50 at one point.
That's possible.
Yeah,
definitely.
But at the same time, we stuck with it, and I think we made a great decision as far as sticking with the show and kind of changing the way we come up with different topics. Because when we first started the show, the RPG Cave was very much like, hey, we'll focus on this one topic, and then we'll just come up with topics every single week, which is kind of what we do now. But it was very much like very focused on a specific game and nothing else.
Yeah.
Whereas now we have, I feel like we have a good plethora of topics where sometimes we'll talk about a specific game or a specific franchise or a specific company, or we'll talk about like a general RPG topic, like tonight's show. Sometimes we might do like a list show or like a review discussion. Like, I feel like we're much more varied now in the topics we cover, which I think definitely helps kind of give us the fuel we need to continue going through the show. But what do you think about this question, Garret?
No, I agree with you. I think we're definitely more experienced on how to handle like future topics, like within the next few weeks or so, and we definitely plan it out a lot more than what we did in the first week. In the first episode, we had a timeline, but honestly, after that, we were both like, "What do we do?" Or like, "How do we do this?" And I think for us, I think I wouldn't say we're casual about it, but we're comfortable of like going through kind of each of these episodes and just talking about. We're actually pretty surprised that it's like, oh, we're only talking about this topic. Are we going to be just talking for 20 minutes? Or 30 minutes? And then we full blown like 1 hour 15, just really digging into it, having so much fun. It's actually surprising, some of these topics that I was like, oh, we're not sure if that's going to be really good content. And then we're like, oh, we had a fantastic time. So I think we got into a good groove after 99 episodes. So
I definitely think like when we got past like the first like 20 episodes, I really feel like we started to hit our stride a little bit. And definitely like when we got to past episode 50, we really found like the keys to success to kind of make this kind of like a much longer term deal than we ever envisioned when we first kind of started planning the show. Especially because we were both kind of worried that, because we don't play enough role-playing games, because we just only have so much time, there's only so many games we can talk about. But because we've really greatly expanded what we talk about, I think it's really helped us in a big way. So I'm excited. I can't wait to see what the show's gonna be like when we get to episode 200 or 300 even. But
Well, yeah, there's so much content.
Yeah, exactly.
in
Well,
the
next up,
far-flung future.
Drellesh says, question for the show. No questions for the show, but I wanted to congratulate you both on 99 episodes. As I came into your quote unquote cave very late, I started listening during mid the 60s. So the
The
mid-level
1960s, got it.
The 1960s. I think. And he says, I think. So we're not even sure where Josh really started. Some things you mentioned you could have revisited anew, I think, especially discussions around evergreen RPG topics. He would love to see maybe us kind of revisit one day. Drellish's favorite RPG of the year. Having almost completed Final Fantasy 16, it made it my second favorite of the year. Nothing yet has been able to diminish my love for Octopath Traveler 2, though. The characters are truly memorable and the stories are extremely well crafted. Although Final Fantasy 16 stands out for its superb story, Octopath Traveler 2 is a much better pacing with its telling and thus deserves to be my top RPG game of the year. That's interesting because, like, yeah, that's actually something, believe it or not, Josh, we've talked about a couple of times, actually, Garret and I, about maybe revisiting some old topics that you know, maybe we could do them better or something like that. It's actually why one of our original topics of the show, I think on episode 3, which was basically at the time where Garret, I felt so bad for poor Garret, where we would come up with topics sometimes that I came up with the topic and Garret knew nothing about it. And then I would sit there and explain the topic for 45 minutes to Garret. So one of those episodes, I'm actually redoing kinds of as a Pitch Stop Retro Gaming episode for this month. That's actually coming out later this week about working designs, which was our third episode, where they did a bunch of stuff in the 90s. And I think like I can revisit it better as like a smaller video versus having people go back and listen to that discussion again. Because then I can show off some of the props, like actually show off some of these expensive games on these shelves. Yeah. Like I think like that there's a better approach there. So I think like there's we can revisit some of these ideas in the future. But what do you think about this, Garret?
Just revisiting RPG topics for sure, man. Like there's a lot of topics in here that's like, you know, there's lists. There's also like just the idea of like the definition of RPG. Oh, for sure, man. Like we do RPG Cave, you know, what makes an RPG remake, you know, type of deal going on, and just go back and just revisit the topic. And now that we've, you know, played more of the recent games, and of course going through Final Fantasy 16 kind of spurred up that topic. And not only just that, it's just like kind of the idea of an RPG. It's dynamic, you know, going out throughout the years. I'm sure I hear a lot of people when Final Fantasy 7 Classic came out in the 90s that you know, they didn't know if that was a real RPG or if that's a real Final Fantasy game as well, and that stirred up a lot of controversy. So I think these topics kind of is meant to come back up again, and I would love to do another evergreen RPG topic. That would be cool.
Yeah, for sure. Well, next up we got Nagachaka, who says, congratulations on episode 99. So far, the only RPGs I have rolled credits on this year are Final Fantasy 1 Pixel Remaster and Let's Go Pikachu. So between these two, I would definitely have to say Let's Go Pikachu. But in 2023 is so far from over that I'm thoroughly enjoying Persona 5 Royal. And there's also Starfield and Super Mario RPG later in the year. So who knows what will take the top spot. Once again, congrats on 99 episodes. And here's to another 99 episodes. Thank you, Nagachaka. Shout out to
Thank you, Nagachaka.
Yeah. Also, I think it's super interesting that Let's Go Pikachu is actually his favorite game of the year so far. But
over Final Fantasy 1.
Yeah.
I bet that bothers someone. I bet it like just a random, you know, Final Fantasy hardcore fans looking at that in disgust. It's like, man, Let's Go Pikachu beat the original Final Fantasy for this guy.
It just makes sense. Sad. It's
Let's Go Pikachu is good.
Every time I see that, I agree. I actually like that game too. Like when I hear other, you know, Nintendo content creators talk about those games being bad, I'm like, really? I actually like them better than Sword and Shield. So
oh no, they're way better than Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield's not great.
Yeah. But also Ribo says, how many times is Street Fighter 6 an RPG going to come up though? you better believe it's going to come up a lot before the end of the year. I think.
Is Zelda 2 an RPG? Well,
Yes,
the world may
we
never
talked
know.
about that. Zelda 2 is for sure an RPG, 100%. I'll die on that hill any day of the week, Garrett. Anytime you want to bring up, dirge up that discussion again, or whenever you want to talk Sega Saturn games, I've got to say my Sega Saturn next to me, Garrett.
You know what we should do? We should have like this kind of spectrum. I don't know how to do it. Maybe a square quadrant type of thing, or maybe from left to right. I don't care. But we're going to put dots on this. Like, where does this game land? And Zelda 2 is going to feel like...
I thought the perfect solution for this. We go to tier maker, Garrett, and we have 2 tiers, not an RPG and an RPG. And then we have all the box arts for all the games, and we just move them into the different categories and do like a tier list with that. What's an RPG and what's not an RPG. And of course, shout out to Seth in the chat, who also agrees with me, Garrett, that Zelda 2 is absolutely an RPG, 100%. It is as much of an action RPG as Kingdom Hearts is. I will say that. But
okay.
But
Kingdom Hearts is not great either. But
yeah, no, I never said it. I never said the quality matters, Garrett. It's whether or not it's an RPG. That's different. And also, Zelda 2 is the best Zelda game ever. But that's beside the point.
Whoa.
We talked about that before. Another hot takes episode. Go back and listen to that. And then last comment of the week comes to us from ScheiGuy. Thank you, ScheiGuy. ScheiGuy says, congratulations on making it to level 99. Not 99 factorial, though. I don't know what that means. It's a math term.
99 factorial. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Anyways, keep on going. That's definitely a math thing.
So ScheiGuy says, I'm working on the entire Xenoblade trilogy. I originally played only Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but to appreciate the DLC, I'm going back to the others. I completed Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and the DLC earlier this year. I just completed Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I'm about 1/3 through Torna. I plan to rewatch key scenes from 3's Event Theater and then do the DLC for 3. 3 remains my favorite, though, but I didn't play that this year. So Xenoblade Chronicles 2 actually wins out for my favorite RPG of 2023. The game was a little too thirsty for my tastes, but past it all, it was a great game with a ton of heart, a solid story, and an all-time great soundtrack. The ending made me cry twice. Also, shout out to Nier Automata, which I also played this year too, and it's a masterpiece.
Nice.
But yeah, that's an interesting take, because I was not expecting someone to say Xenoblade Chronicles 2 over something Nier Automata, which I know Nagachaka, if he's hearing that somewhere, he's just like, oh my God, what's going on here? What kind of topsy-turvy world are we living in where someone likes something like that over Nier Automata? But yeah, I think that's interesting. Like, I haven't played the Xenoblade games, so I don't really have too much to say about this, but I know, Garrett, you probably have responses to this.
ScheiGuy, I applaud you. Thank you for going back and playing through these. Xenoblade Chronicles, it really is a special set of games and RPGs that you probably won't see like in a lot of other role-playing games. How interconnected those 3 games are is actually pretty incredible. Maybe the Trails games are about that level as well, times like 20, because there's just so many of them. But yeah, it's just one of those rare moments, and it's very rare coming from a Nintendo first party, Monolith Soft, going through these series, and I'm so glad that they did. The writing's fantastic, the cinematics are great, gameplay, if you're into it, great, but it's just it has its ups and downs, for sure. So ScheiGuy, good for you, man, going back into the first 2. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is divisive, for sure. A lot of people love it, or I think most of the Xenoblade Chronicles fans love it, but for me, it was fine. It was great for what it was, and I also teared through that. Like I teared up at the end of that game, but at the same time, oh man, I was kind of done after it. And then Torna, I got to a point where I was just like, I'm done. I don't want to play this anymore. But 1 and 3 are fantastic. I really like those games. So good for you, ScheiGuy.
Yeah. Whereas I honestly just couldn't get into 2 because of the performance issues. Because honestly, if that would have released on Switch 2 and would have actually ran at a solid frame rate and stuff, or would have looked visually interesting, I honestly probably would have been more into it. But who knows? I want to give those games another chance at some point, Garrett, like a serious chance, like not just dabbling in them, but like setting aside time to play them. But
you can
I'm just
play
not at that point
Xenoblade
yet.
Chronicles 3 first, as ScheiGuy did. I think that is a very good I would give that one first a shot. And if you really, really enjoyed it, like you're really into it and you want to learn more about the lore, then I go back and play 1, then 2.
Okay.
But if you go through 3 and you're like, oh, that's a good RPG, and it doesn't really impact you or anything like that, it's like, okay, I think you're kind of done. You don't need to play the other games because they're kind of more or less the same, or just not as improved. You know, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is like probably the best high quality in terms of just technical qualities and quality of life, and also just story and lore. I think it's the best one. Yeah.
I think that's really good advice. Like I never really thought about it that way, because even though like I know that they're connected, like that a part of my brain holds me back from wanting to go back to those. But it's just like that didn't really stop me from jumping directly into the Trails series, but not playing all the games first, like in order, and still having a good time with it. So like maybe I do give that. You know what? I'm gonna take your advice. I'm gonna add Xenoblade Chronicles 3 to the tournament bracket and replace a different game with that instead. So that'll be in the tournament bracket that I might stream later this week. Wink, wink. But.
Yeah. So 3, there's definitely like maybe there's some characters that overlap, but you don't need to know any previous Xenoblade games in order to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Definitely.
Okay.
So
Nice.
you can go through it and have the same experience as me.
Yeah. All right, Garrett. I think that's going to do it for a 99th episode. We've been live for almost an hour and a half at this point. We should probably wrap this up. So
we did it.
Before we go, Garrett, first of all, I just want to say huge thank you to everyone. Of course, all the listeners, everyone who's kind of stuck with the show. Like I will tell you that there were old episodes of the RPG Cave where we had like 8 listeners, and one of the listeners was me. So like, and our audience has really grown over time. Like we've seen it, a lot of people, like cool people join the Discord and talk RPGs with us. Like it's been a wild ride doing the show, man. And I've really just, of course, enjoyed spending time with you. Like it's been great. A great excuse for you and I just to hang out every week and talk role-playing games and just be big dorks about some of this stuff. So I just want to say, first off, I appreciate you, Garrett, as a person. I've really enjoyed our time together doing the show. And I'm here's to 99 more episodes, man. This has been super fun. And again, huge thank you to everyone who listens as well and supports the show.
Definitely. Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me, Ryan. I didn't, when we were first starting this, I remember you been teasing about it before when I was on Shags. Like, oh, think about us doing like role-playing game type of stuff. And then when you actually pitched it to me, I was like, yes, I think role-playing game, it's like my favorite genre out of all the video games out there, or all the genres. And talking with you every week is really nice. You're always super informative about this stuff. And I'm glad that you give me advice on all these older role-playing games as well. And just hearing about your journey with all the gaming is really cool. So yeah, I appreciate you having me on board. This is very nice. And the carpool gaming community.
At least on this show, we don't make fun of you for liking role-playing games like they used to do on Shack all the time with you. It used to feel so bad when you'd start talking about games and like Donnie would just tune you out or just mute your mic.
Oh, he would roll his eyes. He's like, oh, okay, this crap again.
Yeah. We'll bring Donnie over one of these days, because I actually feel like when it's time to talk Fable, I can probably get Donnie on the show to talk role-playing games. Probably.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyways, Garrett, plugs go.
You can follow me at Twitter at Blind Explosion. And then also so I've been live streaming a little bit, but I think I'm going to transfer over to just streaming every now and then at twitch.tv, Carpool Gaming, whatever the Twitch.
Twitch.tv/Carpool Gaming Live. Also, yay. I'm so excited.
Yeah, definitely. I got to set that up with Sean though. But yeah, I'll probably doing very similar things that Sean's doing, where he's going live just whenever he has free time. And that's what I'll be doing, is like maybe a weekend or so, just go through like a couple hours of Octopath Traveler 2 or something like that. So yeah, just keep on the lookout for that Twitch live button.
Nice. Also, again, if you are a patron or if you are a prospective patron, submit your questions to Garrett this week. You can ask Garrett anything over on the Pits Patreon podcast for Patrons podcast this week. And this will be a rare opportunity for people to get questions in for Garrett that might be not even about video games, because you'd be surprised, Garrett, how many of those questions are actually about video games. So
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm
As
ready.
for me, you can find me on the Twitters at Ryan Turford. You can also find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming, right here, youtube.com/Carpool Gaming. Of course, podcast services around the globe. So for Garret Bland, I am Ryan Turford. This has been the RPG Cave level 99. Next episode will be level 100, Garret. So the enemies are going to start hitting harder. We're gonna die a lot quicker.
We're gonna die pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And we're out. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.